Vladimir Lenin's name is closely tied to the birth of the Soviet Union, the first state founded on communist principles. He led the revolution with hopes for a new, equal, and prosperous state, but in the end, it led to more oppression and inequality. His death on January 21, 1924, marked the beginning of a new chapter in Soviet history, one that saw the country evolve in ways both consistent and contradictory to his vision. How did Lenin's death change the course of the USSR, and what led this nation, born out of the revolution, to become a global superpower? Lenin was born in 1870 in Simbirsk, Russia, into a family that valued education and progress. But what truly influenced him toward revolutionary politics was the execution of his older brother Alexander in 1887 for an attempted assassination of Tsar Alexander III. Following the works of Karl Marx, Lenin dedicated his life to removing the monarchy and establishing a society he believed would bring equality. In 1917, Lenin's Bolshevik Party took control during the October Revolution. This marked the end of centuries of Tsarist rule and the beginning of a new socialist government. The Bolsheviks promised land for peasants, factories for workers, and peace for a country exhausted by World War I. It was an ambitious experiment, and like any experiment, it faced immediate challenges. One of Lenin's early economic policies, known as war communism, was implemented during the Russian Civil War. This policy involved the nationalization of industry, taking grain from peasants, and banning private trade. These measures were meant to supply the Red Army and stabilize the new state. However, they led to severe economic decline and widespread starvation, causing tension among the population. Recognizing the failure of war communism, Lenin introduced the new economic policy, NEP, in 1921. This policy allowed small-scale private businesses and market trade. Well, in more simple words, it gave peasants the right to sell their extra crops. It was a compromise between communist ideals and practical needs, and it helped strengthen the economy. By the time of Lenin's death, the Soviet Union was still in its infancy, but was beginning to recover from the chaos of revolution and war. So on January 21, 1924, Lenin passed away after a series of strokes. His death created a gap in power and caused an intense fight for leadership. Lenin had left warnings about key figures in the Communist Party, particularly Joseph Stalin, whom he described as dangerous due to his tendency to abuse power and his harsh methods of dealing with others. But why did people still support Stalin? Some believed his strong approach was necessary to maintain stability in a country recovering from chaos. These warnings, however, were suppressed by Stalin's allies. This allowed Stalin to secure power and defeat rivals like Leon Trotsky, who was eventually forced to leave the country and later assassinated. Stalin's rise to leadership marked a sharp turn in the Soviet Union's policy. His rise began in the 1920s when he worked his way through the ranks of the Communist Party. By 1922, he became General Secretary, meaning his power extended into all aspects of governance, economy, and society, a position that allowed him to build alliances and appoint loyalists to key roles. Unlike his rivals, Stalin used his administrative power strategically, securing his control over party operations. To secure his dominance, he portrayed himself as Lenin's true successor, even organizing public displays of loyalty to Lenin after his death. One of his first major moves was to end the NEP, which he viewed as a temporary concession to capitalism. Instead, Stalin launched a series of 5-year plans aimed at the rapid industrialization and agricultural collectivization. Factories were built, cities expanded, and the USSR became an industrial powerhouse. But these changes came at a high cost. Collectivization forced millions of peasants into state-run farms, leading to widespread resistance and famine, particularly in Ukraine. This starvation, often referred to as the Holodomor, caused millions of deaths and remains a point of historical controversy. Stalin also started removing people from the Communist Party and other areas who disagreed with him. He used extensive networks of spies and informants to identify critics and perceived enemies. The NKVD, Stalin's secret police, played a central role in executing his orders, including mass arrests, interrogations, and public trials designed to spread fear among the people. Thousands of party members, military officers, and ordinary citizens were arrested, forced to leave their homes, or executed. The impact on ordinary people was heartbreaking. Families were separated as arrests and deportations became common. Entire communities lived in constant fear, unsure who might disappear next. Speaking out or even expressing doubt about Stalin's policies could lead to harsh punishment, leaving people feeling powerless and trapped. And let me ask you this. What else should a true communist ruler do to secure his position even more? Total censorship and propaganda. The press, education, and art were tightly controlled, making sure that only Stalin's narrative was presented, leaving no room for alternative viewpoints or criticism. The fear from these repressions allowed Stalin to maintain his hold on power but left people distrustful and deeply hurt for years to come. Despite these internal struggles, the Soviet Union's industrialization positioned it as a key player on the world stage. When World War II began, the USSR was initially caught off guard by Germany's invasion in 1941. However, it organized a large defense, leading to important victories such as the Battle of Stalingrad. By the end of the war, the Red Army forced the Nazis to leave and advanced into Berlin, helping secure the Allied victory. And this is where it gets interesting for Stalin as a supreme ruler. After the war, the USSR emerged as a superpower. It controlled much of Eastern Europe, where communist governments were established under its influence. Stalin led the USSR until his death in 1953, serving as the head of the state for over 3 decades. And it's very interesting to mention as well that Joseph Stalin, as the leader of the USSR, had access to immense state resources, but he did not accumulate personal wealth in the way modern billionaires or even some other world leaders did. Instead of personal riches, Stalin lived a life of modest lifestyle by choice, though he had privileges. He lived in luxurious government-owned properties, used state-owned vehicles, and enjoyed access to exclusive items like rare foods, books, and entertainment. But these perks were more about consolidating power and maintaining control than personal enjoyment. By the time of his death in 1953, Stalin had not named a clear successor, leading to a power struggle among senior officials like Nikita Khrushchev, Georgy Malenkov, and Lavrentiy Beria. Stalin's leadership left a power vacuum. This lack of preparation was a reflection of his autocratic governance, where centralizing power was prioritized over long-term stability. Nikita Khrushchev rose to power, initiating reforms and denouncing Stalin's harsh methods during his secret speech in 1956. This period also marked the beginning of the Cold War. The Soviet Union's military strength, nuclear program, and ideological appeal to movements worldwide secured its position as one of the 2 dominant global powers. But how did the Soviet Union, born from the chaos of revolution, achieve such influence and strength? Some argue it was the large scale of its industrial and military efforts, while others point to its appeal for nations looking for different paths away from colonial rule or capitalism. But the cost of this rise cannot be ignored. Millions of lives were lost due to famine, repressions, and forced labor. The environment suffered as resources were exploited to fuel a rapid industrial growth, and the society Lenin envisioned, one of equality and freedom, often gave way to authoritarian rule and suppression of dissent. Lenin's death marked a turning point in Soviet history. It ended an era of revolutionary experimentation and ushered in a period of centralized control under Stalin. Can rapid change be achieved without sacrifice? And how should a society balance its ideals with the realities of governance? Don't forget to like and subscribe, it helps my channel more than you know. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Natasha and see you tomorrow.